we both, you and I, and a lot of people, well, not a lot, you, Denny Hamlin, myself, we get mouthy against NASCAR.
Mhm.
But I believe is it because we care, Kevin?
Well, I think the one thing to remember is we all see it we all see things from a different aspect, right?
Yeah, what
And
are
I
they
think
thinking?
yeah, and but yeah, I think when you look at it, gosh, it's so much
I mean,
bigger
that's
than
what we're thinking. What are they thinking? We
yeah.
don't know what they know is what I'm saying.
Yeah, and I think the biggest thing is it's so much bigger than anything that we can even compute.
Yeah.
Like the magnitude of the business and the way that it is run and the amount of people that are into it, like I don't even know where to start. And that's really for me when I'm like, you know what, this car sucks or that restart sucked or that call was terrible. I've learned to not take offense to it.
We're thinking
And
about ourselves is where we're messing
yeah,
up.
we're
It's all about me.
and you know we've spent the last, I guess it's we're getting ready to, I guess it's been a year and a half that we've really spent a lot of time as drivers. We've spent a lot of time with NASCAR and their group. And I'll be honest with you, we've never had more conversations about how to make the sport better and how to make things better and how to do things differently and what the rules packages should be and how the tires should wear. And just you wouldn't believe how open they are about everything that's going on and the communication that they're having with the drivers. And to see all those drivers sit in a room, I don't know that you ever got to experience anything like that, but we go I mean weeks and weeks and weeks and weeks of time together talking about how to grow the sport and how to do things
Is
better.
that the
And
new RTA?
no, ours are just drivers,
Oh,
driver
tell me
advisory.
about this. When does
Yeah,
this
so
happen?
yeah, we have the drivers advisory council that's been around. It's been around for a little bit now, but it really with the new car, the safety of the new car and the accidents and things that we had with the concussions, kind of brought everything to a head. And um, but I think for me, I was pissed after Darlington last year when my car caught on fire and it kind of
Yes.
kind of ruined the playoffs and
We did a
really
Kenny
that's
Wallace show about it.
yeah that's yeah that's really when it kind of came to a head. And but we got some stuff done and we got some things started to change and really we changed the rear clip. We've worked on the doors. We've worked on um, aero packages and so it's how do we communicate in them and help them. That's really where we've evolved to because the communication is there and I think from the driver standpoint we're as big a part of this process as ever. We can't just turn our back anymore and say I do it this way and then just walk off. Like if you're going to have an opinion, now you're going to have to sit in a room with all of us and tell us your opinion and show up to the meetings and be a part of this process to make it better because really that's what happened when you guys were all there and Dale would wrangle everybody up and say all right, if it's not right we're going to fix it. And I think it's been a very proactive process to be able to have the drivers involved. I can't speak for the
Do
teams and
you
I
feel like let me ask you this in that context. Do you feel like when your car caught on fire last year at Darlington and ruined your race, do you feel like you were so upset that they finally listened to you? Because I know there was engineers involved to tell NASCAR, here's what we need to do. We need to spray this on here and it won't do it. Did they
yeah,
listen to you?
I think part of that I think if we'd have been as involved now
Mm,
then as we are now, I don't know that it
got
would
it.
have ever evolved to that because they were at a point where they waited too long to fix the cars
A lot
and
of fires.
a lot of fires, a lot of problems, and we should have never got that far. But they realize that now, and they've been much more proactive with a lot of things that they've done. So it's been an interesting process, and some of that I fault myself for some of that, not wrangling everybody up and really putting us all together as a group of drivers and having a better process of trying to communicate because I tell you, the communication right now is we have more communication with NASCAR than we have ever had in the history of my being here. Period, by a lot, not even comparable.
Your opinion on the way NASCAR is going about these penalties and these fines?
Well, I think that the intention was to stop all the garbage, right? Was to stop. I think unless they know it's real, then they're not. Then the teams are just going to keep going. So you got to remember one thing: the teams have been as much a part of designing these rules and penalties and the way that this goes as much as NASCAR has been. So I see it from a different perspective because the teams in NASCAR are the ones that have come up with a lot of this stuff, as far as the penalties. But in the end, I think in order for this car to work, like I think that you have to be if you're gonna treat the body and the engine and the tires as a no go policy, you have to be strict. And let's face it, if you're the guy owning the team, it's a big money game. And
So,
I
so
don't.
you're saying that the car owners,
They
the
have to
engineer,
deter the teams. They have to deter
yeah,
the teams from.
they asked for this car and
They
asked to
asked
be
for this
put in this
car,
car.
and they asked for this car, and they asked for tougher rules. So you can't have it both ways.
Right, I got you. Okay, so well, let's just talk about what you just said. The next gen car, that's the name of it. I'm going to phrase this in a little different way than I did Tony and Mark before you. Do you like this car? If you were to design the car, was this the type of car you would design?
I would not have designed it this way.
What would you have designed? What would you went after?
I think that's a loaded gun, right?
Don't
Because
get yourself in trouble.
that's a loaded gun. But I think, look, this car is a lot like the car of tomorrow. When we
Mhm.
started the car tomorrow, it was the biggest piece of crap that you could ever put on the racetrack, right? And all
Yeah,
we
it had
did
a
was
wing on the back. Like, what
all
is
we
that?
did. Like, you remember, yeah, it started with a thing on the
Put
back
a
of it.
turd on the back of the car.
Oh my God. So all we did for 5 years was change that car.
Yeah.
And that's the bottom line. Like the car has not performed how everybody wants it to perform. A lot of the aerodynamics are made on the bottom. It didn't crash well. We've made that better. But we got to make it race better. Everybody knows that. We got to make it race better. And I think a lot of that is going to come through the aerodynamics of the car. There are a lot of neat things about the car. I think the way that it shifts and, the wheels and tires and the thought process of how it's supposed to be. But right now, that none of that matters until we get the racing exactly right. And that is all going to come through making the tires fall off more, getting the aerodynamics right. And it's, there's just going to be some things that have to be overhauled. How I would design it, I think the design of the car, I think, was done a lot with a sports car mentality. And, I think that the teams have fixed a lot of when we had the car tomorrow, the teams fixed all the problems, right?
Mm.
Because they just went to their fab shop and said, "Oh, we got to cut the clip off. Oh, we got to cut the roof off." And we put a new one on, and it was done in a week. Now, that is not possible. When you want to change something, you have to go to the manufacturer, you have to go to the teams, you have to go to NASCAR, you have to change rules. I mean, it is a long, long process. And, I think that's the part that everybody's trying to go through right now is the process to change it is slow. And when
So
when it was before, the teams would bail you out because they could fix things so fast.
in my mind, I'm thinking to myself, and you just comment on my thought because I'm trying to keep you out of trouble. Uh, I'm thinking, why did they design this car? Oh, I know why. Because I know the car owners went to NASCAR, and I believe maybe this is my theory. I don't know this. Roger Penske won them over. Maybe Chip.
Mm.
That Chip Ganassi isn't in the sport anymore, but these IndyCar type owners, hey, let me buy this car from Europe. Comes in a crate. I bolt it together. Uh, Am I way off on my thinking? And it's okay if I am.
Yeah, I don't know the specific. I've tried to stay very driver specific and work on the things that we can work on because
That's why you're happy.
well, no, I just the owner side of things and the owner NASCAR relationship, I just don't know a lot about because I don't know the inner workings of it to the T. And that's why we've tried to stay so driver focused. But the thing that I will tell you is I think in concept from the beginning to get the cost under control and do the things that we needed to do as a sport in order to do that, the theory of the car is correct. I think it's just going to take a little bit longer to get the racing where we want it to be. And it's just going to be a little more expensive for a few more years than what they thought. And I think the runway to the car and the concept of cost and the things that go with it is just going to take a little bit. It's going to take a couple years longer because of the fact that they're just going to have to they're going to have to change some things in order to make it right.
Kevin, do you think it would benefit NASCAR in the future to maybe one day think that we're going to have this era coming up and it'll be 2 years where there will be no NASCAR major changes? Little $1,000 deal here or there, but it
Well,
just
we
seems
just
like
did
the
that.
change. Huh?
We just did that for 2 years. We had a parts freeze. We had a parts freeze not 2 years ago. So during the last year of COVID, we had a parts freeze. You couldn't submit any new parts. And the year before, you only had there was a certain parts freeze. So before we went to this car, we had 2 years where development was frozen on the engines, the cars, and developing parts. And the last year, you couldn't develop anything. You had what you had. So we've been there, and they know how to do this. And I think when we went through COVID taught us a lot about how we could function as a sport. And I think COVID also saved our lives in delaying the next gen car 1 year to be able to develop it to the point where they released it. But COVID taught us a lot about the processes of how we could function as a sport. And through all those parts freezes leading into what led to the next gen car to help the owners absorb some of the savings of the last 2 years of that car, of last gen's car, before we got to next gen.
So there was some good things that came out of COVID. I'm going to say this. Tell me if I'm full of crap or not. Wilkesboro and our dear friend Marcus Smith, who's a dear friend of mine, I'm doing the NASCAR race day shows, gets a $7 million grant, for COVID money. And maybe that saves the North Wilkesboro Speedway. Am I far-fetched?
No, I think there's a number of good things that came out of COVID for our sport, and I think the efficiencies and just kind of how fat the sport was, and pushing ourselves to just get to the racetrack, right?
Yeah.
And
We
we
were
did that.
spending too much money.
We were spending way too much money, and we're still spending too much money. But I think COVID really opened everybody's eyes to where we could race, when we could race, how we raced, and the things that we did in order to get to the racetrack. So there's a lot of things that came out of COVID that changed our sport forever. I mean, we went to Kansas last week. I left Saturday morning and got home Sunday night at 9:30.
Fantastic.
And,
Hey,
that the way that we function allows you to have a family and do the things and that you couldn't have done 15 years ago.